Welcome to the Notebook, everybody. We're December 11th on this rainy Monday in Montreal. I am Marc-Antoine Godin with Arber Basu. How was your weekend, buddy?
Busy. Yeah. I didn't go to Buffalo, but watched that game on television. Obviously, a Sunday night game at the Bell Center with the Predators. We had our Canadiens beat Christmas party after the game. Did some karaoke.
Would you allow me to post that picture of you working in the garage?
Yeah, sure. You could do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I'll use our Basu and Godin account to post it.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was just me finishing up yet another thing that I call the Notebook. But yeah, my Canadiens. I have 3 things that I'm involved with that are called the Notebook. It's getting a bit much. This podcast.
Yeah.
The weekly Notebook at The Athletic. My segment on TSN is called the Notebook. It's just. People must think I'm the most unimaginative person on the face of the earth, but which I think they're probably not wrong. I mean, it's honestly, the evidence is pretty overwhelming that is indeed the case, but yeah. So that was me putting the finishing touches on what was published Monday morning. But coming off a weekend, I thought that for the Canadiens was an interesting one because. Well, let's just get into it. I mean, after the game, Brendan Gallagher played against Nashville and even against Buffalo to a lesser extent, but pretty feisty game against Buffalo, really feisty against Nashville.
Yeah.
Just up in their business the whole game, in the blue paint, bugging UC Saros, driving the net from all sorts of different angles, and driving the net with the puck often. And I find that that's something that he's doing a lot more often than he used to. It used to be him just getting in there and poking for rebounds and crashing the net on shots, but it's him actually bringing the puck to the net, at least in this game, and I think relatively speaking more often this season. So after the game, he mentioned that heading into the weekend, they had put an emphasis on creating momentum before the Christmas break, just wanting to bank a good amount of points so that they can feel good about themselves in the Christmas break and position themselves to be within striking distance of the sort of playoff peloton, if you will, which frankly, they're within striking distance right now. But it's when you look at it, and so now obviously they won one of those games in a shootout, again, not in regulation. They're still stuck on, I believe it's five regulation wins, which is worst in the league.
Yeah,
which, you should keep under consideration whenever you're looking at the standings. But
actually they're tied with Seattle in that department. Seattle's got 5 too, so they're both dead last in the NHL.
Yeah, right. They're worse. They are worst in the league. So I mean, just look at Seattle. But like Seattle's very indicative. Like Seattle has a .397 points percentage because I think Montreal also leads the league in post-regulation time victories. So because they have 3 shootout wins and they have 4 overtime wins. So that's 7 victories after. I think they're tied with Toronto, if I'm not mistaken, for first in that. Yeah, Toronto has 4 shootout wins and 3 overtime wins. So they also have 7 wins after regulation. So Seattle's sitting at, 397. This is prior to games Monday night, obviously. I don't know if Seattle's playing tonight. And Montreal's at 482 in terms of points percentage. So all is relative. But so Gallagher says that the team is focused this stretch. This really put an emphasis on this stretch to finish strong. They have 1 win and 1 loss so far. But you look at their schedule, and it's not crazy what he's saying, because they got Pittsburgh coming in here on Wednesday. They're a bit of a mess. They're kind of reeling. I mean, Kyle Dubas had to come out today and defend and give Mike Sullivan the dreaded vote of confidence, which he got, which means he'll be fired within the next few weeks. But anyhow, you got the Penguins on Wednesday. You got the Islanders in here on Saturday. The Islanders are playing really well. You got the Jets, who just lost Kyle Connor, perhaps long-term. They have a few other injury situations, so they're in a bit of a precarious spot. Then they're in Minnesota, which has been a bit of a mess all season, but have been playing better under Hines, obviously. But still, much better after the coaching change. And then they're in Chicago in their last game before the break. So if you look at it, the 5 games that remain in this 7-game stretch that Brendan identified, or that the Canadiens have identified as their opportunity to make a move before the Christmas break. And it's not outrageous that they could maybe take, including getting to overtime a couple of times and whatever, if they could take 8 out of 10 points somehow, then they'd be, whatever combination that would be, they'd go into the break with 35 points and would be kind of in the thick of things, you got to think. Which some people might think is a bad thing, and frankly, I think it would be hollow. And, listen, right now they're sitting 12, 13, and 3 after 28 games. As we mentioned, 5 regulation wins out of 12, a minus 21 goal differential, 6-9-1 on home ice, 6-4-2 on the road, so credit for that. But 6-9-1 on home ice. There's a lot of indicators, and that's without even going into the deeper metrics and the possession stats and chances and all that stuff. There's a lot of things that would suggest that even if they do enter the break at 35, like it's all of this is artificially being propped up for them. But if they want to believe it, then that's their prerogative. Yeah.
I mean, they've played more games than everybody they're chasing, except for Tampa.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not crazy when you present the state of their opponents, but what's the thing that Martin St. Louis has been saying the most often these past few weeks? We're chasing consistency. That's he seems to repeat that phrase every day.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily a matter of who's their opponent, it's themselves, how they play, how can they find consistency and build on that. I mean, me personally, call me, a pessimist or whatever, but I don't believe in their chances of making the playoffs, even with any sudden
How about
push.
I call you a realist? I'll call you a realist instead.
Thank you very much. But I can understand, though, that they want to build a winning streak because at some point, if they want to understand what they've got to see what works and what's not, and what doesn't, and what does it look like when it works. You have to be able to generate some momentum, earn some success. I'll say, okay, our progress is going in that direction, or that player is making progress, or that part of our game is making progress. So you need to create some a bit of momentum, have a winning streak at some point to establish that and have some beliefs and some things that are more concrete to build on. Do I think that they're able to do that at this point? Honestly, I don't. Because when you have a head coach that's so concerned with the fact that they're lacking consistency, they might be able to stop a losing skid, but in order to build like 4 or 5 games winning streak, I mean, kudos to them if they're able to do so. And I understand them as players that they want to do that and more. But the proof remains to be shown to me that they're that type of team that they're able to do that.
Well, their longest winning streak of the season has been 2 games. They've done it 3-4 times.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you look at the 4 times, like the game in Detroit and the game against Boston at home, that was legitimate. Even though both of those wins were in overtime, that was legitimate. They played well in those 2 games. But a few of the other ones, like they beat Columbus and Winnipeg at home back to back, not back to back, but they beat Columbus and Winnipeg at home before heading to Vegas, where they played quote unquote the best game they have played since Martin St. Louis took over as coach. Those games were not Picasso's, as Marty likes to say. They were bad. Anaheim and San Jose consecutive wins. I mean, the Anaheim game with both of those games were not great. So really, even if you looked at it through the prism of how many games in a row have they played well, and Marty keeps pointing back to that Detroit, Boston, Vancouver, Calgary stretch. Yeah. And that's so
as if they played great against Vancouver, for instance.
Yeah, they lost 5-2 to the Canucks, but he puts it in there. Like that's to him, that's the bar. That's what showed him what this team can do is those 4 games. Boston, 100%. They played a great game at home, a lot of intensity. It really was impressive. Even the Calgary game, even though they lost 2-1, played a pretty good game. But but then everything went to hell, and then like 2 games later was the game that showed Marty exactly how bad the Canadiens could be when they went into Boston, total no-show, lost 5-2, but probably looked worse than that. You were at that game. I mean, that was a total disaster. So, um, but I kind of think like what you just said, like they have to have a winning streak at some point. I guess they don't have to, but the fact that they find themselves where they are without having won more than 2 games in a row is kind of encouraging if I were the Canadiens. Like, I just feel like, listen, like we've managed to get to this point. We're not out of it. We haven't even played our best hockey. We haven't even strung together a few wins. Let's try and do that. Let's see what happens if we do that, sort of thing. I'm with you. Like, I'm with you and I'm not, in the sense that I'm with you that there's nothing this team has done to convince me that they should even be thinking about playoff contention, even though they're all competitors. Everyone should be thinking about the playoffs.
They got to do it.
Yeah. But where I would disagree is that they have not showed me that they're incapable of having a winning streak. Like, I mean, it's possible. Like, they have to string together. They have to do something they haven't done this year, basically, which is to string together 3-4 quality performances where they don't have a lapse in the middle of the game or at the beginning of the game or at some point in the game where they just start leaking chances and not having the puck. And like every game that happens. So is that impossible? No. But is it likely? I would agree with you. It's not. But I think this upcoming schedule creates that possibility. It's possible. So, because frankly, it's the other reason why it's interesting. They're kind of aiming for Christmas is because historically, and Marty now has real life trauma over this. This trip, the coming up, starting in Winnipeg on Monday, next Monday, I should say. This trip is the one that kills the Canadian season, year after year after year. The trip. The Blackhawks had the circus trip for all that time, and now that the Cirque du Soleil has taken over the Bell Center over the holiday period, we should also call this the Christmas trip for the circus trip. Sorry, the circus trip for the Canadiens. And that game in Winnipeg will start a stretch of 7 straight games away from home, broken up obviously by a pretty extended Christmas break. They have like 6 days between games. So let's see if they can change that narrative. I don't know if they can necessarily. It's last year it proved disastrous and was the most humbling point of Martin St. Louis' brief coaching career. But let's see what they and he have learned from it.
Yeah, and the year before that was the year where they were the most banged up. And I remember they went to Florida. It was like
Ducharme's call. Yeah.
Yeah,
it was the final nail in Dom Ducharme's coffin. Yes,
it was David Savard and the Kids. That was the band. The name of the band was David Savard and the Kids. It was
Cam Hillis played on that trip.
Yeah, that's right.
Cam Hillis played an NHL game on that trip.
Right,
that was just crazy, and people were that was that the trip where everyone just kept getting COVID as the trip went along, and they had to leave people in various cities. Yeah. I think Alex Romanov had to be left in Florida with Jake Evans, if I remember correctly. But
right.
And then Romanov's wife started posting pictures of them in a boat in South Florida, just hanging around having fun. Yeah. Anyhow,
and I think that's when Hervé Pinard played his first game too, or around that point. There's plenty of historical reminders to tell us that around Christmas is never good for the Canadiens. So trying to change that narrative could be a good idea. I express my doubt because I fully sympathize with all those fans out there who say, you know what, let them sink, let them finish as low in the standings as possible so they can get as high a draft pick as possible. I'm with you guys. The only thing is that at some point, if you embrace that rebuild and you say, we need one more quality prospect, that team won't start from scratch again. They're going to go with the young players that they've got. So the young players that they've got who are not injured, so mainly Suzuki, Caufield, Gouli, those guys, at some point, they need to build on something. They need to gain momentum individually, and collectively too, and have the feeling that their contribution to the group brings the team forward and makes it go somewhere, because that rebuild is also, it's not banking on just some abstraction on what future players could become. It's also the young players from now who have to get better. And at some point, that's why when Martin St. Louis says that winning is part of development, that's what he means. So that's why I understand also the attraction of saying, you know what, aligning, even though it might not, most likely won't end up in the playoff spot, just getting a good track record of gathering wins, a few wins in a row, could make those players have the feeling that they're taking more ownership of the team and they're bringing it in the proper direction. Otherwise, it remains stale, and it's like, well, one day our young players will be good, but you want to have the feeling sometimes that things are actually improving, getting better, even though they're far, far from the destination.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I think we should talk about one of those. It's almost as if you knew what we wanted to talk about today on the podcast. But we should talk about one of those young players because you look at Cole Caufield, especially on Sunday night against the Predators. That's a 1-goal game. Multiple opportunities to put the puck in the back of the net, and you see him like whiffing on shots now, and like you just kind of can see frustration seeping into his game where he's just not putting the puck in the net as often as he's accustomed to. Now, right now, after that game against Nashville, I believe that was the 6th game in a row without a goal. Yeah, that's correct. He's not scoring at the same rate as he was last season. He's got 7 goals in 28 games right now. After being tied for the team lead in goals last season, in only what was it, 46 games, had 26 goals. So he's got 7 after 27 now. So he's definitely not trending in the right direction. However, every time Martin St. Louis is asked about it, every time Cole Caufield's asked about it, both of them say our emphasis right now is to round out my game, improve my play away from the puck, and do all the other things necessary to be in a position to put those goals in the net. So, which is good. You want that. So, today I think both of us kind of looked at some numbers with Cole Caufield, and honestly, when you look at some of the numbers, what Martin and Cole himself are saying rings true. So these are from Natural Stat Trick. I'm just going to run through a few of them just to give an idea, and then we can talk about it. But so Cole at 5-on-5, solely 5-on-5, solely Cole Caufield's individual numbers. So his goals per 60 is down by is a third of what it was last season. He was scoring 1.61 goals per 60 at 5-on-5 last season. He's at 0.48 this season. But his assists are up. His first assists are way up. And other metrics are up as well. I mean, his shots per 60, shots on goal per 60 is up slightly. Not that much, but a little bit. His expected goals individually is almost exactly the same. 0.92 per 60 last year, 0.93 this year. His shot attempts are up. His unblocked shot attempts are up. His scoring chances are up. Or his high danger scoring chances are very slightly up. He has, and there are a lot of things that suggest that the stuff on the defensive side is also kind of trending in the right direction. It's just that the goals are not there. And so these numbers suggest that the goals will come. I guess my question is, what if they don't? Like, what happens if this is just kind of like, Martin was asked
but
about
what if
this.
they don't? Look, if you looked at the numbers, you must have seen also that he's being dragged down by an unusually low shooting percentage.
Of course.
Okay, so last year he was at 60%.
He's at
5-on-5.
Yeah.
That's it. So a thing like that, like a dry spell like that, is something that players usually overcome, because you don't stay at 4.8? You don't stay like that.
4.8, yeah. 4.5.
Okay, let's say 4.5. You don't stay at 4.5 forever. It's not all of a sudden
Especially, it's not
a
when you're Cole
condition.
Caufield. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's just that when you're in a slump like that, you have to look around and say, well, how are you going to get out of it? It's probably very not traumatizing, but angoissant.
Yes. It's creating
Um,
anxiety.
It's yeah, exactly. It must be creating anxiety for him, thinking that okay, wait a minute, I think I'm doing offensively everything that I've always done, and the results are not there. If had Kirby Doc been healthy, I think it would have been they would have prolonged the experience away from Nick Suzuki, or they would have had the tools to mix and match a lot more and try different things. Under
Mhm.
the current circumstances, I say keep it like that. It'll take the time that it takes. Just keep it like that because there are a few things. I think more and more the Caufield and Suzuki duo,
Mhm.
especially this year, has become what they call it among the stats and the geeks a low event duo, which is highly surprising because last year, up until this year, they gave up a lot of goals and they scored a lot of goals. So if you
Yeah.
look strictly in terms of results, not expected goals, not chances, but just pure goals, they're very low event. They score a lot less, but they give up a lot less too. So I think
They give up way less.
yeah, exactly. That part is encouraging, and and they generate their chances. So at some point, it's a law of averages, and it should regress to the norm. But
Well,
there's a few
here's
things.
my point on that. But here's my thing on
Yeah.
that. Sorry but just I think I'd like to hear you on this because what if the things they are doing to prevent those goals is
Mhm.
what is also preventing them, or specifically Caulfield, from scoring goals? At 5-on-5, I'm
I,
talking about.
I
Power play, I think, is a whole different
I
animal.
don't
But
think.
like,
Yeah, I don't think the two are related. One thing is that this year, with Monahan being there, with Dvorak being there, and there's always Evans, uh, Suzuki and Caulfield together, they don't start a lot of shifts in the defensive zone. They barely have. Caulfield doesn't see any defensive zone faceoffs
he sees
uh,
more than he
except
did last year, though.
except on icings. Well, it hasn't been the case in the last 10 games or so. He's got very few of those defensive zone faceoffs. He's loaded with offensive
He
zone
is loaded with
faceoff.
them, but I'm just saying he has more than last season. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
He's got about
but
one
there
more
to me
per
there's
60 than he did last year.
okay. Well, to me there's not necessarily a correlation
Actually,
between
you know
being
what?
able to.
Sorry. I just want to fix that because I think this is relevant. Like 16.5 offensive zone faceoffs per 60 compared to 15.25 defensive zone faceoffs per 60. Last year, the ratio was 20.49 to 14.32. Like, this is what I'm saying is that
It's more balanced this year.
they're trying to round out his game so that he can take more defensive zone faceoffs. So he's not limited to an offensive zone faceoff duty, which is a good thing. You don't want your
Mm-hmm.
best line to only be available if the faceoff is in the offensive zone or in the neutral zone. Um, but that's just one of the things I'm saying. Like maybe there's a correlation between, an increase in defensive zone faceoffs. I mean, their offensive zone, faceoff percentage has gone down from, or his at least, Caufield's has gone down from 58.9 to 52. Like it's not, he's still getting more offensive zone faceoffs than anywhere else, but it's still a drop from last year, and so I don't know. Like that's the thing is that these numbers, like I don't see Caulfield generating a whole lot of 5-on-5. Like this is eye test time. Like this is like what we're seeing on the ice compared to the numbers, because there's a lot of numbers that we could throw out here that are super encouraging, and you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
goals for sure. Even in terms of expected goals, their expected goal percentages, Caulfield's is up more than 5% over last year. It was 43.5 last year. It's about 49.3 now. Um, all of these metrics show a step in the right direction. Like high danger chance percentage went from 41.2 to 50. I mean, there's a lot of encouraging things. But maybe this is, and I'm not saying this is permanent, but maybe this focus on the play away from the puck and this focus on rounding out his game has eliminated some of the situations that Caufield found himself in at 5-on-5 that put him in a position to produce.
Yeah, well, Marty often says, we know he's a scorer. Now it's all about making him a more complete player. We know he's a scorer. And, the other thing, something else we hear is it's not as if the guy's forgotten how to score goals.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But the counter to that, and I've heard it from other coaches in the past, is that if you don't work at bolstering your strengths and you're always working at mitigating the deficiencies, instead of keeping your strengths high and you just want to make your shortcomings a bit better, you have the chance of becoming average in everything. So there's a risk. When you say you don't forget how to score, yes and no, because a guy like Caufield, he's got an amazing shot, but he constantly needs to be confronted to the fact that what used to work before is not necessarily going to work now. So he's got to constantly find new ways to beat the goalies of today and the defensive schemes of today and the pace of the game today. So we're far away from all those sharp angle goals that he would score in Wisconsin or even in his rookie season. So trying to
those aren't going in anymore. He's trying them.
Not at all.
But they're not going in because every goalie in the league knows he's going to try it.
Exactly. So, not trying to shoot from different spots, maybe trying to go inside more. If you look at the his shot location heat maps, there's not a ton of shots that are taken, from the home plate. It's still from the outside. So maybe changing the shot location, because there are all those stats that you said before, there might be high danger qualities in there, but there's the volume of shots remain the same, but where exactly are they taken from? I think that's one aspect where he might be looking at improving it. Also, the other thing is, I had the feeling that Martin Saint-Louis was not being super aggressive in home games to make sure that they would take the Suzuki line away from the top line on the other side. And that's one thing that they could make sure that they do the best is but that's a bench thing, right? That's a game management thing from behind the bench, from the coaching staff, to make sure that you get your top guys away from the top line on the other side.
Or at least the top defense pair, yeah.
Yeah. But when you look, the top defense pairing, they have trouble. I mean, yesterday against Nashville, they played a lot against McDonough. But I mean, if I look at in the past 5 games, the centerman that they faced the most yesterday was Parsinen, the Preds third line center.
Yeah.
The game before it was Blake Lizotte. I'm not sure. Right now he's fourth line center. Then you had Beniers against Seattle, his first line. Larkin against Detroit, that was first line. I asked Marty on that after that game specifically about that, the fact that they were seeing a lot of the offensive top line. And the game before that against Florida was Lundell, which is a very good 200-foot guy, but he's not their top line center, obviously, in Florida.
No.
So I think there's some
tough opponent for sure, though.
For sure. Well, that's a good team.
Yeah,
good team will have more than one good line.
Yeah.
So in those last 5 home games, you got 2 of those 5 games where they saw plenty of the opponent's top line. So it's not as bad as I thought it'd be, but they have to keep going and making sure that this happens. That's one way, I think, for Suzuki and Caufield together to start generating more offense.
Well, this is one thing I want to bring up, though, is this. And it's just that, we've stopped talking about Josh Anderson because Josh is back, but he's not back. Or he's back to just being inconsequential, not scoring goals, Josh Anderson. Against Nashville, he was a hot mess. He's just like he had an easy pass to Sean Monahan on a 3-on-1, and maybe Sean Monahan has to do a bit of a better job reining in that bobbly pass that Anderson sent him. But there was no reason for that pass not to be smooth along the ice, right on the tape. He had a clear passing lane. He just botched it, the point is not to pile on Anderson. The point is that so Josh Anderson is in a dark place, is so singularly focused on scoring goals. Then he stops being focused, and then he goes against Florida and is a heat-seeking missile and is just hitting everything that moves. And you're like, yes, that is Josh Anderson. That's what provoked Marty saying Josh is back and all that stuff. And so it's, but I question whether the only time Marty has done something to get someone out of a slump is when he put Uri Slafkovsky with Cole and Nick in St. Louis, when he was in a really dark place. It's not his fault it didn't work with Josh. Your only solution to a slump can't be to put the player with Cole Caufield and Nick Suzuki, and then what do you do if that player is Cole Caufield? What can the coach do? And he has not shown a great ability to sort of nip these slumps in the bud. We never talked about it, and it's not as if Tanner Pearson was expected to score a whole bunch of goals, but he started the season scoring goals, and then he stopped, and it just went on forever. And I remember that same game where Anderson scored into the empty net, Tanner Pearson also scored, and he was sitting there, and the look of relief on his face, you just should have seen it. He felt like this weight had been lifted off of him. And just because we aren't applying, just because it's not part of the public discourse, does not mean that these players are not putting their own pressure on themselves. And that's actually the primary source of pressure that they feel, is their own sense of self and their own sense of worth. And so all this to say, everything you just mentioned about getting that line away from the top defense pair, the top opponents, maybe this is an area where Marty needs some work. Maybe this is an area where Marty can be doing more things, subtle little things, to get guys out of slumps. And, Marty often talks about what he did to get out of slumps, and he would just go to practice and try to score as many goals as he can in practice, and all of a sudden he would score in the game.
Yeah.
Well, Marty's in the Hall of Fame. Marty's a Hall of Fame player. Hall of Fame players generally knew how to get out of slumps. Not all these guys, frankly, probably not any of these guys, are going to be in the Hall of Fame when their career is over. They need some help to get out of these slumps, and I don't know the extent to which. I shouldn't say that. I know the extent to which they get that help from their coach, because there's a lot of work that gets done. Cole's had a lot of work with Marty and the coaching staff, video, again, but focusing on his game away from the puck, not focusing on his offensive game. Josh Anderson, same deal. Uri Slafkovsky, same deal. They all get personalized, tailored specifically to what they need video sessions on a regular basis, whether it's with Martin St. Louis, whether it's with Adam Nicholas, whether it's Zach Burrows, whatever, they get it.
Yeah.
But tactically, bench management wise, things in the game that the coach can do to sort of break the rhythm or what have you, I don't know if Marty's doing those things, or perhaps he is and needs to do them better.
We don't see it. Yeah.
We don't really see it. And so I'm not blaming him. I don't think you shouldn't take it as blame to him, but maybe this is an area of his coaching game that can be developed a little bit. I remember he was asked not that long ago, I think Ylönen asked him, where do you feel your own development as a coach is? And he had there was a long pause before he answered. It took a while. He admits he has work to do, but I think knowing the specific areas where he needs work is hard for him to see. This might be one of those things. I don't know. I'm just asking questions here.
Well, the fact that there's also so many players that have been dealing with slumps that you cannot fix 6 guys at once, especially when you don't have a go-to guy who's like the line doctor, like Brendan Gallagher used to be back in the day. You put anybody with Gallagher, it'll get him going. You don't have that right now on your team.
No.
And Slafkovsky this time around has shown to be a much more inspired player and is ready.
He's the best player on his line.
That's it.
He's the best player on his line right now.
So you keep him there. I think if the origin of that discussion was to compare maybe the numbers with the eye test. Another thing from the eye test is that they don't get stuck as often, pinned in their own end. It doesn't happen as often as it did last year.
The Suzuki line? No, absolutely. Yeah, that's fair.
So that's why it's part of, they should be spending more time in the other end, or be more probably. We should be seeing a bit more of that dynamic counterattack and more threat. But that's why I'm referring to a low event line, because less is happening on both ends.
Yeah, but I mean that is reflected in the numbers. That them not getting hemmed in their own end. Yeah. Is perfectly reflected in the numbers. Like, that's the thing, and so that's encouraging. If I'm Cole Caufield, and I'm sure he's being shown far more detailed metrics than what we're looking at. But if you just look at expected goals against, I mean, it was at 3.06 per 60 last season. It's at 2.69 now, and it's actually the expected.
That's good improvement.
Yeah. It's a great improvement, and the expected goals for are up. So. See, that's one where the eye test doesn't really jive with the numbers. Like, I don't see how Cole Caufield's been on the ice for more expected goals per 60 this year than he was last year at 5-on-5. Like, I have trouble seeing that. But the goals for number is, I mean, so you're looking at a 63% goals percentage when Cole Caufield's on the ice right now. That's fantastic. And that's great.
I think that a lot of those high danger chances came off the rush. It's not necessarily when you're pinned in your own end. It's more like a turnover from anybody on the ice when he's there, and there's an odd man rush. There's a scoring chance. I think that happened a lot with him on the ice. It was not necessarily his fault, and it was not necessarily the reflection of his line being stuck in their own end, but they've given up so many turnovers, so many odd man rushes, so many high quality chances that way. They're only starting to tame it down a bit, but it's been a factor in the first 20 games.
But I think you're very correct in pointing out how there's definitely been an improvement when it comes to getting stuck in their own end, and that's undoubtable. And so.
How about the power play? How about
the power play?
The 5-on-5 play of Caufield is one thing, in terms of his production and whatnot. He has not shown to be necessarily, maybe contrary to what we would have first thought of Caufield. Maybe some people pictured him as a power play specialist when he first arrived in the league. Turns out that he has been anything but. But this year, it reaches new lows in terms of his production.
Well, he was good on the power play last season. I mean, it's not as if
he had seven of his 26 goals were scored on the power play.
Yeah, exactly, which is not. Yeah, it's kind of normal. But now, I mean, his goal rate on the power play is way down. He's actually getting more points per 60 on the power play because he's getting assists. Which he wasn't. He didn't have a single first assist on the power play last year. Not one. He got a 0. So that's something. But he's shooting less on the power play. 3 fewer shots per 60 on the power play than last season. Obviously, his shooting percentage is abysmal. It's at 7.7. It was at 16.7 last year. Expected goals per 60 are down. Shot attempts are down. Unblocked shot attempts are down. Scoring chances are down. High danger chances are down. Everything's down. So yeah, it's clearly, and this is a tactical thing too. This is again, and this is despite the Canadiens' numbers with Caufield on the ice on the power play being up. Shot attempts are up, shots on goal are up. Yeah, I mean,
that's it.
Yeah,
I mean, if his unit is actually slightly better than it was.
It's actually significantly better, believe it or not. I mean, just from the numbers. I mean, this is, again, the eye test versus the numbers, but from the numbers, they're significantly better than they were last year with Caufield.
But if they find other ways to generate offense, right now with Suzuki at the goal line, with a bumper that they finally found a way to weaponize properly, with Slav, if you can start shooting more from the other circle. Personally, I can live with Caufield not producing as much and certainly not scoring as much, because finding other threats is a long-term investment. And this is something that if they can find new paths, eventually Caufield will open himself up and they'll stop cheating in this direction, and things will look good for him as a shooter again.
Well,
so
most recently, the guy who's been benefiting from all the attention that not only all the attention that Caufield gathers, but the way the power play is now set up, with Suzuki essentially becoming the goal line guy most of the time, Caufield staying in his habitual circle, but Monahan kind of moving the bumper. But the whole power play has shifted to the left side of the ice. The guy benefiting, the guy who's been getting the most looks, has been Slav in that right circle. And, you know, he hasn't done a good enough job getting one-timers off. I think a few of those passes have been in his feet, because I think everyone needs to adjust to attacking from that side of the ice as well to a certain extent. But he's been open a lot. Now, if he can start potting some goals from that spot, will be the number one way to get Caufield open in his spot, is if teams need to pay extra attention. Right now, they don't really have to. And you can tell they're not, because he's getting open a lot, and it's just a matter of, it's twofold. Slav needs to be better finishing those. And I think on a few occasions, the passes were not ideal, but that's a shooter's job, is to make a bad pass into a good pass. Like that's what good goal scorers do. That's what Cole Caufield does when he's at his best. It's almost impossible to throw a bad pass to Cole Caufield and not have him get a shot off with some zip on it, heading towards one of the corners of the net. So yeah, I mean, listen, it's hard to underscore. Like, I mean, earlier we were talking about how the Canadiens are where they are, despite only having 2-game winning streaks this year. Well, they also are where they are without Cole Caufield producing like Cole Caufield normally produces. They are where they are with Nick Suzuki on pace for the exact same number of points as he had last season. You know, they are where they are without Kirby Dach, without Alex Newhook, without all these guys. Like, they are where they are despite some things that could conceivably improve. And in Cole Caufield's case, as you mentioned, he's not going to shoot 4.5% at 5-on-5 all year. Some of the worst scores in the league.
He could, but not for the rest of his career. It could be a one-season thing. It could last a whole year.
I can't see it lasting a whole year. 4.5. I mean, I could see him being below average shooting percentage-wise, but not that low. 4.5 is abysmal. I mean, it's really, for a shooter of his talent and his quality, it's impossible to me. And we could revisit this at the end of the year. At the end of the year, if he's still shooting 4.5% at 5-on-5, we can revisit this podcast and I will eat crow. I don't care. There's no way. I think Cole Caufield would finish the year shooting. I'm going to go double. He's going to finish the year shooting 9% at 5-on-5. What did he shoot last year? Hang on. Let me just check before I start going.
5-on-5? I think he was 16.
No, I think that was power play, if I'm not mistaken. 5-on-5. Oh, yeah, no, you're right. 16. So I'm going to go 9. I'm going to say he's going to double his shooting percentage between now and the beginning of the season. And he'll finish the year at 9. And if he does that, he'll score a lot of goals. if he's shooting just at 9, which, remember, is still 7% below what he shot last season in half the season. Should mention that, too.
Well, that could go a long way in helping the Canadiens have a winning streak.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's see. I mean, and I think the main thing is for Cole to keep his head about it, you know, and make sure, because let's not kid ourselves. Like, Cole Caufield defines himself as a goal scorer because that's all he's done his whole life. He's not doing a good job hiding how much it's bothering him that people are talking about him not scoring goals. Like, it's not exactly his favorite topic of conversation, and it's not exactly something that he's enjoying going through right now. It's kind of the first, other than the first season with Dom Ducharme, or his first kind of full season in the NHL, that first half season with Dom Ducharme, where it was obviously a train wreck for him. But ever since Marty took over, Cole hasn't gone through something like this. You know, he scores regularly. He goes, you know, going 6 games without a goal is an eternity for him. So, but That's going to turn around. At some point, that's going to turn around. And when it does, I feel like we've said all this before about Josh Anderson, but I think in Cole Caufield's case, I really do feel it has more validity to it that once he gets a couple, they're going to start to come with great frequency. And if Slavkovsky keeps playing the way he is on that line, he's going to help that process along because his playmaking has been tremendous over the last few games. I mean, Sunday he was kind of so-so. It wasn't his best game against Nashville. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great. But prior to that, he's been carrying his line. I don't think that's an exaggeration to say that.
Yeah, and he's been producing, and Slav has been creating so many chances by bringing the puck to the net that if that creates a rebound, his line mates need to be there to get those rebounds. You know,
yeah. The problem is that he's the guy on the line who gets the rebounds. That's the problem.
Yeah, but he's been carrying. You know, from bringing the puck to the side of the net. First, there's a first shot. I mean, when I told you that Caufield needed to shoot a bit more from the inside, that's one of the things for me because his process is right. Mm-hmm. If he's improved defensively, we can see that he's more involved physically too. Mm-hmm. He's carrying the puck a lot more, entering the zone with the puck at a rate that I had not seen him do before. All those things are sound. If he can just shoot the puck more from inside the dot, it should help make
and shoot it without hesitating. I mean, that's the thing is that he's hesitant. There's always a little move that comes before his shot right now, and that's a sign of a guy who's I don't want to say struggling with confidence, but is not confident, as confident as he normally is. And the key with him is getting that shot off. You know, Marty talks about it. Adam Nicholas talks about it all the time, and Cole knows. You know, that's one of his greatest strengths. So like when you see him hesitating, when you see him do that little dangle before you shoot. That's just giving the goalie time to get set, you know, and that hesitancy is a sign of a guy who's not feeling, let's say, at 100% confidence. I don't think Cole ever is feeling unconfident, but I don't think his confidence is on full right now.
All right, let's move on to the mailbag. We're Monday, so mailbag time. We had a lot of questions, so let's go through many of them. We won't spend 15 minutes on each, but we'll try to go through more questions this time. And let's get started with a question that we received by email from Shadid Talukder, who's asking us, he says, this might be early, and I don't expect names being thrown around given that it's early. However, you guys have discussed that Cole, Susie, Slav, Newhook, and Doc make up 5 of the expected top 6 spots when the Canadiens are ready to take the next step. I'm curious if you guys have a sense of what profile of player would most likely complement this group well. What's the biggest stylistic hole missing among these 5 players if we had to design 2 lines, assuming that Suzuki and Dak are the top 2 centerman tandem? Love the show. Makes my Fridays and Mondays. Thanks a lot for that, Shadi. So, Arpin, is there even a need to look for a stylistic complement to that group?
Well, you don't want to overthink it, right? You don't want to be like, oh, well, this guy doesn't fit with the 5 guys we already have, so let's not get him. You know, I mean, it's. But if you're saying in an ideal world, you would want a nice combination of sandpaper and scoring ability, and in my mind, I mean, a big body to kind of have one of Slav and this other player be kind of the big body on that line. You know, with Doc on another line, maybe there's less of a need, but I think that you do want a guy who can handle some of the wall responsibilities, some of the net front responsibilities, and have good hands to go with it. You know, in an ideal world, like Mikko Rantanen would be like great. You know, like, I mean, if you're talking about like in a dream scenario, I mean, I think that would be the best fit. So some sort of version of that, if you could find that, would be ideal. But you know, you're not going to get. I mean, even like Mikko Rantanen was drafted, 10th overall, if I'm not mistaken, or 9th or something like that. So It's not like but still, I mean, if you're asking to draw up a player that would fill out that group ideally, to me, it's that guy.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, what they need is, in an ideal world, a guy better than those other 5 guys. But
yeah, basically they need to add their best player. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Well, that might be a sad truth there, but yeah, a combination of size and another high-end hockey IQ guy.
Yeah,
just to follow Nick Suzuki. I think that would be great. But because I think that Suzuki, Doc are two centermen that will have in the next 2 or 3 years enough of a defensive awareness that they will help their line. But I think that it also a winger who could be helpful, defensively
I think Slap's a better fit with Doc, frankly. I mean, it's down the road. I mean, maybe listen, he's doing well so far, but I mean, it's with Suzuki and Caufield. I mean, but I think so. Someone, anyhow, that's my thought on that. Okay, let's go to another question. What was the next question we wanted to get to?
Well, you were there was a question about Jake Allen from JD Lagrange.
Oh, yes.
Who says Sam Montembeault was told he wasn't being traded. Then he got signed to a contract extension. Allen was told that he's not getting traded. Are the Habs management really looking at trading Primo? Can't imagine the return to be worthwhile. But
can we just
Jake Allen has not been told that he would not be traded.
No. This is I think what was sort of misread in some of Jake's comments that he told us actually on Friday, you and I. What Jake Allen said is that he has not been approached to say that you are on the verge of, or there's a possibility that you will be traded. That's all he's saying. That conversation has not happened with Ken Hughes. Whereas in the past, we've heard from Joel Edmondson, Josh Anderson, Tyler Toffoli, a number of players, some of whom got traded, some of whom didn't, where Ken Hughes felt the need to go and talk to them about some of the rumors that are floating around and whatever, and just, mêler pendu la la, as they say in French, like just basically lay the groundwork, set the record straight. So I think Edmondson was told, you may get traded. It's possible. It's not impossible, and we'll keep you in the loop. And that's exactly what happened. And Josh Anderson's case, it was sort of the opposite. Well, like, listen, we're not looking to trade you right now. I can't guarantee you that we won't, but it's not something that we're actively looking to do. And he appreciated having that conversation. This was a long time ago. I'd imagine that conversation might be a little different today if it was held, but anyhow. And in Jake Allen's case, all he said is that, if something were in the works, or if something were close, or if something was even possible, I would imagine Kent would come and talk to me, and he hasn't done that. So that doesn't mean that Kent has told him he won't be traded. That's a total different thing that he hasn't told Jake Allen, or else I think he would have told us, frankly. That.
Yeah, and Jake also said that he understood right from the moment that 3 goalie rotation started, or that they carried 3 goalies from the beginning of the season. So naturally, it's in the natural order of things to keep 2, and if you have 3, everybody will start thinking that they're bound to move one of the 3. So obviously, it's not going to be Montembeault. So we're down to him or Primo.
Yeah.
So I think he's fully understanding of the possibility, but he says it's always, people talk about trade, but in reality, they're always a lot more difficult to execute than when we talk.
It should also be clear that he doesn't want to get traded. That's not. I mean, when he was presented with the possibility, although I'd be interested. I asked him about, well, if you were presented with a chance to win, and by being traded to a winning team. And then he called that a totally different animal. I said, for now, I'm right here, and I don't know what's different about it. It's just like it's you know it's that it is what it is.
Well,
when you get traded at the deadline,
teams.
Generally you get traded to a winning team. I mean, that's really how it usually works.
Yeah, but a team, I agree, but a winning team is unlikely to be looking for a number one goal. So if he's traded to a winning team, he's likely to sit on the bench a lot.
There are three potential cup contenders right now who could use Jake Allen. Jake Allen would represent an upgrade in goal for all three of them: Edmonton, New Jersey, Carolina. Three teams that could legitimately aspire to win the Stanley Cup with the players they have assembled, where you could make the argument that Jake Allen would at least be in a tandem situation.
Yeah.
Like he would play.
Or so we thought, because right now none of those three teams are in the playoff picture.
Well, because of the situation in goal. I mean, it's those are three situations where Jake Allen would not be sitting on the bench, is all I'm saying. That he might not be the number 1A goaltender, but he would be part of the mix and he would get games. And so, in any case, he just said that he used that window to say, he signed up to get this team through a transition period. He feels he has a lot to offer this team, and he wants to look back at his time in Montreal as being impactful in getting this team headed in a direction that leads to success down the road. And as Marty said, when Jake Allen signed his extension, sometimes you need a guy who's willing to plant a tree knowing he can't sit in the shade. That's Jake Allen. And so, but he did leave the door open a tiny bit, because I think if he were presented with an opportunity to play on a winning team that was not part of his limited 7-team no-trade list, it didn't sound like that would be, I think, the one scenario where he's kind of like, okay, like let's go give it a shot. I don't know. I don't know. I found it strange that he called that a totally different animal, because I was just like, well, it's kind of what happens when you get traded. You go to a good team. It's good teams. Good teams buy players and bad teams sell them. So,
yeah, for sure, that's true. And as a side note, now the three Canadiens goalies are all three of them are above 900 save percentage. It's been a while since it's been like that, but with Caden Primo making 46 saves in Buffalo, and with yesterday's game from Allen against Nashville, so Sam Montembeault's at 912. Primo's 902, and Jake Allen 901. So the first, I honestly, post Carey Price, I think it's the first time we see that.
Yeah, and 900 is the new 910. I mean, it's like being in the 900s is excellent right now in today's goalie world. So
the average is 899.
Well, there you go.
The goal, the league average.
Yeah.
Okay. Question from War. Is Habs management determined
on Twitter, not his actual
Yeah, that's it, right. Yeah, it's not his real name. BWOAR War. Okay.
Sounds like a goth metal band.
Yeah, exactly. And they're wearing big helmets,
exactly.
Exactly.
Animal heads and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Is Habs management determined to ride status quo in Laval? Are the poor AHL results not a major concern for a rebuilding team focused on development? We touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, we talked about that on Friday, on Future Friday, and the Laval won. The losing streak is over, so it ended at 9 games. They beat Hartford 5-1 on the weekend. So good for you, Laval. Well, I mean, the initial question, yes, I think they are willing to. They're not. I don't think they're going to. Okay, I shouldn't say that. I would be surprised if they went with a coaching change in the middle of the season in the AHL. First of all, you don't really see that very often. An AHL coach being replaced in the middle of the year. It seems a bit more rare than it does at the NHL level, and the other thing being that this is exactly what the organization expected would happen. What's happening now is what everyone said would happen. It was going to be really hard. They're going to lose a lot of games. They're going to give up a lot of
Very
goals.
young.
They're going to be very young. They're going to get pushed around from time to time. There's going to be injuries. Everything that has come to pass in Laval was predicted by the coach and by management back in July. So, again, as we mentioned on the episode Friday, it doesn't make it any easier to deal with, but it's also gives you a sense that the leash is going to be long because all of this was foreseeable. So, I mean, it's a bumpy road, and if you're the Canadiens, you just have to hope that after Christmas, these young players will start to take more ownership of what's going on there. Will start to feel more comfortable as professionals. Will start to show more consistency in the level of play. And in particular, guys like Mailloux, Roy, to a lesser extent Kidney, but like Mailloux and Roy, I think are two guys that they would really like to see take a step in January and really go and just start making just having more consistent efforts. And so to answer the question, I think they will stay the course. And frankly, who knows? Like, you could see Lane Hudson in Laval at some point. You could see Reinbacher in Laval at some point. I don't know what their plans are with Adam Engstrom. I haven't asked anyone about it, but maybe at the end of the season. I'm not sure how that would work. But, there are guys that they can add and have.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing, though, is that since they're unlikely to be a playoff team, the runway for those newcomers to really gain some experience in Laval late in the season will be rather short.
Yeah, but it'd be fun. For as short as it would be, it would be fun. So we'll see. But I don't think, sure. But anyhow, that was just in the context of what changes could come. I don't see too much changing other than maybe that.
I'm sure that, managements, when they look at their farm teams and how things sometimes are not going the way they would hope, they would think that they would like to make coaching changes, but it's always a matter of who's out there that would make sense and would make us better.
Mm-hmm.
And the margin of difference, to find an AHL coach that would fit what you're trying to do, that would be actually better than the guy in place, it's a question that's better answered in the off season, right? Yeah. Instead of, who's just sitting there. If you have a coach who's not coaching currently at the AHL level and that's in the lower ranks,
mm-hmm.
Are you sure that it's going to be a better guy than JF Wool? I think it's just it's all a result of things that were entirely expected from Wool himself. So
yeah.
All right.
Let's do one more.
Let's do two more.
Two more. Okay. Two more.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do.
Can I pick one?
Yeah, choose it. Huh? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. We got one on X from JJ Bowerman. Oh no, actually, let's do the one from JP Clement, because I thought this was JP Clement said, "Salut messieurs, I'm fascinated by Ylönen's case. He looks really impactful on the ice with subpar teammates and little ice time. Do you see him as a player that could become a middle six player, or do you guys think that he's having success right now because of his limited usage? And not despite it, but because of it."
Yeah. I'm not sure he's having a lot of success. He has the opportunity to showcase some skills,
mm-hmm.
And he does from time to time. Is he having success as in production, whatnot? I don't think so. I'm curious to see, though, with Tanner Pearson being injured for 4 to 6 weeks, now Ylönen has a real chance to cement his spot on the third line. Does he have what it takes to become a middle six player? I don't see him becoming a second liner. He's got what it takes to become a good third liner, a guy that could help the second power play on a regular basis. He's got an excellent shot for that. I mean, he's got the skates. He's got the frame.
He's got the hands.
He's got the hands.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a lot going for him. But when Martin Saint-Louis talks about chasing consistency, well, that's exhibit A. Jesse Ylönen really struggles with his consistency within the same game. There are some guys who, from one game to another, you say, tonight he's got it. Tonight, nah, he doesn't have it.
Mm-hmm.
Ylönen, it's like you'll have 3 or 4 good shifts and others where he falls completely flat.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's getting better defensively, but it was not part of his DNA to start with. And he's not a guy who's leaps and bounces better than the average guy offensively.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got to get better. Either he'll have to be better offensively or improve a lot on his defensive game, because as it stands, he's going to be stuck for sure at a bottom 6 position, because the level of improvement he can bring, I don't think is going to be enough for him to become a second line guy.
I think there's something that was mildly revealing for Martin St. Louis when it came to Ylönen, because he, if you'll remember, bring up that game in Boston again on November 18th, and he was put into a top 6 role in that game. I think he was playing with Slafkovsky, and it started with Monahan. I think it turned into Dvorak after kind of halfway through the game or whatever, but he was on an offensive line. And a little while later, I was asking Marty about Ylönen, and I said, you remember that one game where you put him in the top 6 and it didn't go that well for the team? Like, was that a difficult game to evaluate him because of how poorly your team played? And he said, his answer was, you're always being evaluated. He looked me right in the eye and said, you're always being evaluated. And since that game, he has not gotten a sniff at top 6 minutes. So to me, that's not really fair. Like, it's just kind of like, okay, I gave you your shot, you failed, you back down to the 4th line with you. Even against Nashville, he started the game on the 3rd line with no Pearson, and mid-game was replaced by Armia. And so it was like, he doesn't seem to have a long leash. Marty played with his dad. After all, you would think he'd have like some sort of affinity for the guy, but he's like,
he's got the shortest leash on the whole team.
Pretty much,
nobody's got a shorter leash than him.
Well, Armia, I think Armia would. I mean, he's been to Laval twice. I mean, like, it's.
I know, but any positive sign that there might be that sort of game from Armia.
Well, he's got a track record. Well, he's got a track record. I mean, I think that's kind of understandable. But yeah, Ylönen's leash is short. I think, but I think the part of the question that we're not addressing, which is worth addressing, or is his success because of his limited ice time? I think it's possible it is. It's possible that the matchups that you get on a 4th line, the ice time, the level of energy that you can expend on your shifts. Like, I look at a guy like Jonathan Kovacevic, and I think I even wrote this earlier this year, like, this guy looks like, he doesn't look out of place in a top 4 role. And then all of a sudden he gets elevated to play with Matheson, and it's a total unmitigated disaster. And it's like, he's a guy where he's really fits on a 3rd pairing role. Like, he is good. He's not spectacular, but he won't cost you if his minutes stay reasonable, if he gets the matchups that are typical for a 3rd pair. And as soon as you elevate him too much, it's really bad, a little bit too much, and it can be kind of bad. But so maybe Ylönen's one of those guys where the more he gets, the more his shortcomings kind of come through. But I would like to see him get a run on the 3rd line, as you mentioned, with the opportunity that's open. The other guy who could benefit from that opportunity being open is Emil Heineman, who is sort of getting up to speed in Laval. We mentioned him on Friday, but now with Pearson gone, he fits the mold of what Pearson brought better than Ylönen does. I mean, he's a physical player. Like, his physical play does not bother him. In fact, it's part of his game, and he's got an excellent shot. He could play on the power play. There's a lot of possibilities for him. And frankly, I think if the organization had to choose between the two, they'd probably, for who would fill that 3rd line role, I think they would choose Heineman. Assuming he's ready to go, assuming his game is up to speed after missing a long time with an upper body injury.
Oh,
it was,
that shoulder must hurt
I
so
know.
much.
The sternum injury that he had, that bruised sternum. But yeah, so we'll see. But I think there is some possibility. Like that's why I like the end of that question from JP is that there is some possibility that maybe Ylönen's success is partially based on the limited ice time.
All right, last question coming from Corey Traverse, who's asking, "What's the return if they sell Xhekaj?" I know that he's been on everybody's mind. The perception that all of a sudden the Montreal Canadiens are down on him because they sent him to Laval. That's another topic that we discussed in the previous episode. Combining that with Jay Struble, who seems to be getting more and more comfortable every game in Montreal, so that's a good sign. But Xhekaj would fetch a ton for the Montreal Canadiens if they chose to trade him, because there's so few of those players in today's game. It's not just that he's big and mean and fearless. There's also the fact that he's got a great shot and he's got
good feet.
Slightly better than average skating.
Yeah.
He's surprisingly good skater for his size. In that sense, he reminds me a little bit of Ben Sherratt, who, I never got quite accustomed to looking at Sherratt game after game, like, gosh, that guy just moves well. So, and
he definitely had games.
It's a little bit like
definitely
that.
Had moments for sure.
But, yeah, absolutely. So, and also the fact that he's young, his contract runs out at the end of the season, but he doesn't really have the numbers yet to ask for too much. So he would be very attractive also from a financial point of view. But the reason, ultimately, I could say at any point, they could get a lot for him. I don't think there's a single interest in trading that.
There's zero. The reason why the reason why the return would be good is because of everything you just mentioned, which is why they wouldn't want to trade him. So, I mean, listen, I have my questions about what Xhekaj is doing in Laval. He definitely has parts of his game that need cleaning up. I think we were both talking about, I don't think this podcast was up during training camp, was it? Did we do an episode during training camp?
No, we started.
The week of the regular season started, but I do think we mentioned on one of our first episodes that with the training camp Xhekaj had, he was not assured of a spot in the lineup. Like it was not. He's a young player. He has not attained like the status of like David Savard, who as soon as he's ready, he's in the lineup, he's on the top pair, he's playing on the penalty kill, he's doing everything. Xhekaj is not there. He was, I mean, the Canadiens, I'm not going to say they'd be crazy to trade him because obviously it depends on the return and if they got a handsome return, but every team wants a guy like Arber Xhekaj, especially since Vegas won the Stanley Cup. Every team is looking. Look at how many teams are looking for defensemen right now. It's a luxury for the Canadiens to have this many, and so that would probably drive the price up. But that should also be a reason for the Canadiens to keep them because they're hard to find, and especially with that overall package, good offensively, intimidating physically, good feet, everything you just mentioned is why I think they wouldn't trade him and wouldn't even probably entertain offers. Well, I think they always entertain offers, but I don't think they would take them very seriously unless they were really quite outrageous in terms of a return.
I mean, Jack, when Kent Hughes was named GM, I think in his first press conference he was talking about the future, and he mentioned the young guys on the team, and he mentioned Xhekaj.
Yeah.
And I remember everybody looked at each other. Did he mention Xhekaj?
Mm-hmm.
Like he was one of the first ones to see how impactful he could be even before he had played his first NHL game.
Yeah.
To him, he was in the mix with all the other top prospects on the team.
And I remember
that's still
talking to him.
That still is true today.
And talking to him in Buffalo at his first, well, not his first, but the rookie tournament ahead of his rookie season when he was killing everything that moved, but more importantly, was showing some of those other skills. And like you could just like Kent was over the moon about having this guy. because he knows that how rare that whole combination is of a guy who's willing to fight with anyone, a guy who's a punishing hitter, who has the feet to be able to hit people. You know, like if you can't skate, you're not really going to be able to hit people too often. He can skate to catch guys, and he can move the puck and he can shoot the puck. So there's a lot to like there, but there are some holes in his defensive game. That's what he's working on in Laval. It would not shock me in the least if we saw Xhekaj back with the Canadiens as early as January. I mean, I think they want him to stay there for a few weeks and work on his game, but I don't think it'll take that long to see him back up here.
No. All right, Arpin, let's wrap it up. Thanks a lot, everybody, for listening to the Basu and Godin Notebook. One of the 3 iterations of Arpin's Notebook's life. So we'll be back on Friday. The Canadiens have a rather light schedule. Obviously, they're playing only before our next podcast. It will only be the Pittsburgh game on Wednesday to add to all this. But in any case, we'll be back on Friday. Thanks a lot, everybody, and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.